Welcome back to Best's Hangar. We're going to go flying this evening. I think today we might talk about what it costs to own an antique tail wheel like Best here. This little baby YouTube channel is creeping up on 200 subscribers. So if you do like what I'm doing, please subscribe. I appreciate it. When I see those notifications come through, it keeps me motivated to keep doing it.
Alright, when my engine fails today, it'll be a slight left or straight ahead, depending on where it fails. If I'm lucky and it doesn't, then we'll take off and we'll talk about cost to own an airplane like this. Turn on headset. Better. Holding traffic, champ number 1476 Echo, taking off runway 17, holding. Tails up. There's 40, she's ready to fly. Accelerate to 55, 50, somewhere in there. There's 50, we'll climb out there until we're clear of obstacles. We're clear of trees, so we can accelerate to 60. Into runway, slight left to stay above the glide path of the transmission lines. We're above the glide path of the transmission line, so we can start headed back to the west. So what does it cost to own an Aranca Champ? Or really any of these antique tail wheel trainers. Anything like an Aranca Champ, a Chief, a Tailorcraft, a Cub, Luscombe. Any of the airplanes in that class are gonna roughly have the same ownership and operating expenses. Some of them will cost more than others for acquisition. A Piper Cub's going to cost you a little more just because everybody wants a yellow Cub. But before I get into that too far, I will say it's an easy question to answer for me. It's a difficult question to answer for you, just because there are so many variables at play. But I will discuss roughly what it cost me to own Best. So acquisition costs, I won't include too much anyway. I paid just a little bit less than $20,000 for Bess here, and I think I got a pretty good deal for a Champ. It's difficult to find a good Champ for less than $20,000 certainly. A bunch of them in the the $24,000 to $30,000 range that are good airplanes. But there are some airplanes, a lot of the Tailorcrafts, Aranca Chiefs, Luscombe sometimes, you can find them in that $15,000 to $20,000 range. You got to be careful to find a good one, but they're there. And as far as paying for them, you have cash or you can finance the purchase. Whatever makes sense for you. And if you finance the purchase, it's probably going to run you between $300 and $400 a month, if I had to guess. If you pay cash, my suspicion is that the cost of interest on your loan and the opportunity cost of paying cash for the airplane are roughly equivalent. So we'll ignore all of that acquisition cost for the cost of ownership. But there you go, around $20,000 probably is the floor for a good airplane. And however whether you take that out of savings or factor in $300 to $400 a month. Insurance cost is probably going to be one of the largest costs aside from hangar. And for a tailwheel airplane, that's where it's going to cost you a little bit more if you're low time. I bought Bess here with 0 tailwheel time. And my first year is right around $1,100 or $1,200. It'll likely go down around $1,000 when I to $1,000 when I renew. But a tailwheel airplane will always be a little bit more than a tricycle gear airplane. Now that said, you could always not insure the whole value of the aircraft. You could just do liability only. And that'll run you probably $300 a month. You'd save quite a lot. You just decide whether you want to risk that $20,000 plus investment or if you'd like to have it insured. So there you go, around $1,200 for your first year of insurance, likely. The hangar is probably the largest expense, and it's the most variable based on where you're at. Here in the Kansas City area, a T-hangar in one of the, we'll call it major airports, is going to run you between $300 and $400 a month. Mostly between $300 and $350 per month. Private airfields like where I'm at are somewhere between $150 and $250 a month. So we'll call it $2,400 a month for my numbers. Your numbers may vary wildly. I've seen some wonderful T-hangars in rural areas that go for less than $100 a month. And certainly in the Northeast and California, it wouldn't be unheard of to pay $500 or $600 a month for a T-hangar. Now you can certainly save money by tying down. Around here, tie downs anywhere from free to $50 a month. And you know, if you actively fly your airplane, you could probably get away with that. The airplane will weather faster. You will have more maintenance. But if it's between it being tied down outside and not owning an airplane, I would say tie it down. Get some good covers for it to protect it from the weather. Certainly hail would be a big issue. And for fabric covered airplanes, UV, you want to protect it from UV with some covers. Next big cost is going to be annual inspection. Now, my annual this year was roughly $800, and I think that would be about right for an easy annual for one of these simple airplanes. It doesn't take long to annual one of these airplanes, so you know, if you budget around $1,000 for an annual that has some minor repairs in there, you'll probably do okay. Now that said, there's always a chance for an expensive repair, and we can discuss that a little bit later. So that really wraps up most of the fixed costs for owning the airplane. So if we add that up, insurance at $1,200 a year, annual inspection at $100 a year, and a hangar at $2,400 a year, we're at $4,600 in fixed costs. So that means before I even start the engine and fly for the first time on January 1st of each year, this airplane cost me $4,600 just to own. So other than fixed costs, there's the variable costs. And on an airplane like this, the variable costs are pretty easy. Bess burns about 4.5 gallons per hour. So at, you know, if we overestimate on auto gas at $4 per gallon for ethanol free, that works out to being about $18 per hour in fuel costs. And she gets an oil change about every 25 hours. And if we round up, we'll call it $2 per hour for oil. So my variable cost to fly Bess around here is basically right at $20 per hour. So very cheap. Once you get those fixed costs paid for, flying for an hour is pretty inexpensive. Now, I don't carry a reserve fund on Bess. A lot of people, particularly for more complex, more expensive to maintain airplanes, say it's a good idea to, you know, put $10 to $20 per hour in a fund for the eventuality that there's going to be a larger expense, something like a cylinder overhaul or other more major repairs. Certainly all the way up to engine overhaul, which could be very expensive depending on the airplane and depending on the engine. I don't do that, but it would be a good idea to say throw $10 an hour into a pot. That if you fly 100 hours a year, that'd be an extra $1,000 for those unknown maintenance expenses. Now, the reason I don't do that is Bess here has a Continental A65 engine, and the good thing about this 65 horsepower engine, and while it is a gutless wonder, they're inexpensive. They're not inexpensive to overhaul. This engine would still probably be between $15,000 and $20,000 to get overhauled. But there's always multiple A65s on websites like Barnstormers or even Facebook that are mid-time and good running condition for between $3,000 and $5,000. So I just say, hey, I do have a separate account to take care of Bess here, and it's I eat that eventuality, that risk that someday there may be a more expensive bill that comes against me. Now that said, if we break this down, fixed cost of $4,600 per year and a variable cost for me of $20 per hour, then we get down to the cost to fly for 50 hours. If I fly 50 hours, that breaks down to $112 per hour. If I fly for 100 hours, which is always my goal, then that breaks down to $66 per hour flown. Now the interesting thing here is certainly the more hours you fly, the less it costs per hour to fly. So if we look at that, if I fly 100 hours, then 46 of that $66 is fixed cost. And so is it worth it to own an airplane? Particularly an antique airplane like this. For me, it is. You know, if we go 50 hours at $112 an hour, that's right at basically the floor of where I could rent something like a Cessna Skycatcher here in the area. So if I were to fly less than 50 hours per year, financially it would not make sense for me to own Bess. It would make more sense for me to rent. Now, if I fly over 50 hours, every hour I fly over 50 hours makes more and more sense to own and fly Bess. Now that said, I have rented before, and on the years where I rented an airplane, I flew less than 25 hours per year. There's just something about having an airplane available to you all the time, one, and two, knowing that you're paying for that airplane whether you're flying it or not, that really motivates you to go make use of that airplane. When you don't have any skin in the game because you're renting the airplane, which is right for a lot of people, I'm not saying it's not, then at least for myself, I fly far less. But because I have the airplane and I'm paying for the airplane anyway, I am out flying it at least once per week, and most of the time 2 to 3 times per week. And I just have the best time doing that. So for me, yes, absolutely worth it. And for me, in my case, even more so because I keep it at a private strip 1 mile from my house. It is so easy for me to take an evening like tonight and say, hey, I'm going to go flying for an hour. And instead of being gone from my family for 4 hours because I had to drive to the airport, go fly an airplane, fill it back up, put it away, and drive back home, I can go fly for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and be door to door in an hour, hour and 15. Which means I fly far more often because it takes me away from my family far less often. So, that said, there are other ways that you can reduce your costs. Certainly going in partners with somebody that you trust and you have a similar outlook on how to fly and maintain an airplane, that's a great way to save some money. You know, you could drop your fixed costs in half, right? If I had a partner on this airplane, my hourly rate for if I flew 100 hours would go from $66 an hour to $43 per hour by sharing those fixed costs with somebody else. That can make a huge difference. Now this all to say that the way I fly this airplane and the way I own it, at least for my situation, I can't really think of a cheaper way to own and fly your own airplane. Certainly an ultralight maybe could be cheaper. A case could certainly be made for experimental aircraft, and I do intend to have a guest on the channel here to discuss the costs and the things to know about experimental aviation or home-built airplanes. So let me know if that sounds like something that would be interesting. But just be aware that all the numbers I gave you are my numbers. It varies wildly across the country. And what's hard to quantify is with owning an airplane, there's always a degree of risk that tomorrow there will be some maintenance action that costs you thousands of dollars that you didn't know about today. So just be aware of the risk you're taking by owning an airplane. And if you are and you can handle that risk, then there's really nothing quite like it as far as being in aviation. So I'd like to make another point that while owning an airplane isn't necessarily cheap, and it's difficult for a lot of people to do, understand it that I'm blessed. You can be creative and find ways to make this happen. I actually own Bess here, purchase, own, maintain, and fly without taking a single cent from my family's budget. And that's a couple things I do with little aviation-related side gigs. The first thing I do is I do a little bit of aircraft brokerage on the side. Not much, 1 or 2 airplanes per year. I help people find airplanes they're looking for or help people sell an airplane. So if you're in the Kansas City area and you happen to have an airplane that you're looking for help selling, or you're looking to buy an airplane and you're looking for help finding one and navigating that process for pre-buy and all of that stuff to make sure you're getting the right deal and the right airplane for you, there's a link to my website down below. Feel free to give me a call or an email and we can chat what I can do for you there. And the second way I do is I have a little Etsy shop where I sell just goofy little things like these travel mugs that I put sectionals on. You can choose which sectional you want. I also do just regular ceramic mugs and plaques and all kinds of little things. So if you like what I'm doing here and you'd like to support me in Bess and maybe eventual upgrades on Bess, etc., and you like what I make there on Etsy, I would appreciate a sale. That's a great way to support me if you choose. But certainly, I'm not looking for a handout either. But between those two things, I keep a reasonably good savings account just for my airplane hobby, because it is an expensive hobby, and I've struggled in the past with, some degree of guilt for how much it costs that I'm taking away from my family. And these are a few things that I do that completely offset that cost. So if you think you can't do it, I'd say be creative and maybe think of some things that you can do that you'll also enjoy that might make you $1 or $2, and really consider it. There's really nothing like having an airplane available to you all the time. I think that's all I've got to say today, so I'm just going to fly around a little bit more, and we'll come in for a landing, and appreciate you flying with me again today. And once again, really appreciate subscriptions. If you're enjoying what I'm putting out, I'm having a lot of fun, and those subscription notifications really tell me that other people are enjoying it as well. Blue skies.